I never imagined I would tell this story for the whole world to hear me, but I have to do this so that people will hear me and stay away from people like this. My name is Steph, and I fell in love with the wrong person. BD and Steph were in love, and everyone around them envied them. The laughter, synergy, romance, and public show of affection, it was pure bliss. Everyone wished they had a relationship like that. Everyone wanted the love they shared. Life was good for them. They had a good job, they had a good home, and they had family that supported them endlessly. After 2 years of marriage, they had 2 children, and their joy was complete. They had dreams, they shared together what they wanted their future to be like, they had goals that were set out for them to achieve in the nearest future. Every parent described them as their role model for intending couples because the love was real. It wasn't just real outside to the world, but truly, they were happy together. Also, they thought, after 5 years of marriage, they wanted more for themselves. So they decided it was time to move. And to make that move, B had to leave his family to go abroad. Everything was fine, they communicated daily, he sent money and stuff. She was excited she would be joining her husband with her kids shortly, and everything would go just as they planned. The extended families were happy, and everyone seemed to be satisfied because we were all doing fine. And then, after 2 years of BD being abroad, tragedy struck. Steph was informed that her husband passed and her world came crashing down. She almost killed herself, but she had his family always there to comfort and support her. They couldn't transport him back for burial, so he was buried abroad. She tried to move on with her kids, although it was very difficult, but she wanted the best for her children, so they kept living life as though nothing happened, even though she was living in agony. She had to show up every day, happy for the kids. She had to work, and both families were very helpful. His sisters were always around to comfort her, his mom was around, and they even encouraged her to move on with life and remarry. Steph took care of their kids. BD's family assisted her to pay the children's school fees and provided them with whatever they needed as much as possible. And then years later, Steph and the kids were trying to move on, and suddenly, Steph saw BD in a photograph and she was livid. "This person looks like BD, my love," she said to herself. "No, this can't be." She thought she was going mental. She thought it was her imagination playing tricks on her, and she wept for days because of the memories that came flashing back. But this wasn't just any picture. It wasn't a random face on the internet or a momentary resemblance with a stranger passing by. No, this photo was too perfect, too detailed, too him. The same smile that made her knees weak, the same eyes that brightened her darkest days, the same posture she memorized from years of love, marriage, and motherhood. At first, she tried to convince herself that grief was washing over her again, that her mind was crafting illusions to torture her, but the longer she stared at the picture, the more her heartbeat refused to calm down. The photograph was taken at an event. People were around him, smiling at him, interacting with him. And this man who looked like her supposedly dead husband, wasn't hiding. He wasn't lurking in a corner or blending into a crowd. He was standing there, confidently, openly, alive. Steph closed her eyes, hugging the photograph to her chest, feeling the world tilt beneath her feet. She remembered the funeral she never saw, the coffin she never touched, the grave she never stood beside. She remembered the apologies, the sympathy, the tears that fell like rain from both families. And for the first time, questions stabbed her heart like knives. What if he wasn't dead? What if everyone was wrong? Or worse, what if everyone lied? That night she couldn't sleep. Her mind raced through every detail of their life together. Every conversation before he traveled, every call, every message. It all seemed genuine, but now she wondered, had she missed something? Signs? Secrets? Shadows she ignored because she was in love? Days passed, and the photograph haunted her. She hid it from the kids. She hid it from everyone. She didn't know who to trust. She didn't know if she was delusional or if she had just stumbled into a truth she wasn't prepared to face. Her hands trembled every time she looked at the familiar face in the picture. Her heart screamed for answers, but fear held her still. Because if that man was truly Bidi, then everything she believed, everything she suffered, everything she mourned, all of it was a lie. And Steph wasn't sure if she was ready to know why.
Steph started trying to go back to her normal routine after the momentary breakdown she had. She forced herself to breathe, to stand, to smile, or at least something that looked like a smile, because life had to continue. She had children depending on her, responsibilities waiting for her, routines that didn't pause simply because her heart was falling apart all over again. Once no, Bidi's family encouraged her to move on with life, telling her life was too short to mourn forever. Even though she was married to a member of their family, they told her, "You deserve love and happiness." They hugged her tightly, checked on her frequently, brought food to the house, and tried to fill the silent spaces that the past had created. They meant well, at least they seemed so, and Steph genuinely appreciated their constant presence. But deep inside, their words started to echo in her mind in a way she couldn't quite understand anymore. Move on. Life is too short. You deserve happiness. These sentences, which once comforted her, now crawled under her skin like something sharp. Each time they said it, she nodded, but she also felt a subtle, uncomfortable tug at her chest. It was as though something wasn't aligning, something wasn't adding up. Still, she tried. She woke up early again, prepared the kids for school, packed their bags, tied their shoelaces, brushed their hair. She went to work and forced her brain to focus. She greeted neighbors, waved at friends, smiled politely, laughed when she needed to. And yet everything felt like she was performing on a stage she no longer belonged to. At night, when the kids were asleep and the house grew painfully quiet, she felt herself replaying the image she saw. That face, that smile, that moment. The picture didn't leave her mind. It attached itself to her thoughts like a shadow that refused to disappear no matter how bright the day became. But Steph was determined not to let her confusion drown her. She pushed herself through her daily routines with a strength she didn't know she still possessed. She buried her questions under errands, school runs, grocery lists, and bedtime stories. She told herself maybe it wasn't him. Maybe I'm tired. Maybe grief is doing what grief does, twisting my mind, bending my memories. And yet, every time she convinced herself of that, something happened. A scent, a familiar sound, a phrase someone used, and everything rushed back like a wave she wasn't ready for. The more she tried to move on, the more she felt life pulling her back to a place she didn't want to revisit. But she couldn't speak, not yet, not to his family, not to her own, not to anyone. The photograph stayed hidden, the questions stayed locked inside her, and the truth, whatever it was, lingered somewhere in the background, waiting, watching, holding its breath. Steph continued her routine, one step at a time, one breath at a time. But deep within her, something had shifted. Something she wasn't ready to confront. Something she wasn't ready to reveal. Something that refused to let her rest. And with each passing day, the suspense in her heart tightened. Because whatever was coming next, she could feel it, was about to change everything. Steph tried her best to function, but the feeling wouldn't go away. It sat on her chest like a weight she couldn't lift. She kept asking herself the same questions, replaying every moment with Bidi's family, every comment, every hug, every tear they supposedly shed. Soon, fear began to creep in, then tension, then an unexplainable sense of mystery. Because suddenly it became obvious that they weren't mourning as they ought to. They moved on too quickly. They stopped mentioning his name. They changed the subject whenever she spoke about him, and they kept insisting, almost forcefully, that she should move on. These were the words Steph kept saying to herself as she cried.
They all fooled me.
They
They
all
all
knew.
knew.
I was deceived and fooled.
I am
Did
broken.
I deserve this level of betrayal? My only crime was loving wholeheartedly. The more she thought about it, the more the pieces started fitting together in ways she didn't want them to. Their eagerness for her to forget him, their constant encouragement to remarry, their refusal to talk about the burial, the fact that she never saw a body, never saw a grave, never attended a funeral, only phone calls and explanations. Fear began to twist in her stomach. What if they were hiding something? What if this wasn't just a misunderstanding? What if this was intentional? Then one random evening, everything shattered. Steph was scrolling through her phone when she stumbled across a live video. A celebration happening abroad. Loud music, people dancing, a birthday party of someone she didn't know, or so she thought. She was about to swipe away when something in the background caught her eyes. A laugh, a familiar laugh, a voice she knew better than her own heartbeat. Her breath froze. The camera shifted and there he was, Biddy, alive, laughing, smiling, holding another woman, wearing a ring, another ring. Steph's entire world collapsed. Her phone slipped out of her hand as she grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. Her vision blurred, her ears rang. She tried to convince herself she was hallucinating, that she was breaking down again. But the video was still playing. He was right there. No disguise, no shame, no remorse. Her fear turned into a cold, trembling rage. She replayed the video again and again. She screenshotted faces. She zoomed into details. She recognized people standing beside him, distant cousins from his side who once cried with her. She noticed his sister's comment in the live chat. She saw emojis from his mother's account. Everyone was there. Everyone was involved. Everyone knew. Steph began investigating quietly. She traced the location of the event. She checked profiles, comments, friends of friends, the new wife's page, everything. And every new detail stabbed her like a knife. It turned out every member of Biddy's family was part of the scheme to fool her about his death. They lied. They manipulated her. They watched her cry. They watched her break. They watched her suffer and still told her to move on. When she finally confirmed it, her knees buckled. He was alive. He was married to someone else abroad. And the worst part, the part that haunted her more than the lies, was the reason he gave. He said he didn't stop loving her. He said he, quote-unquote, cared. But he had felt tied down and wanted freedom to enjoy life again. Freedom? As if she were a cage. As if their children were chains. As if their life together was a burden he couldn't bear. There was no good explanation. No apology that could fix this. No reason that could justify the level of wickedness they showed. Steph felt betrayed by the man she loved, but even more betrayed by the family she trusted. They staged his death. They buried a lie. They destroyed her emotionally so he could run away and start a new life. And the saddest part? Steph wasn't even angry at first. She was numb, empty, hollowed out from the inside. Because betrayal doesn't always scream. It sometimes whispers quietly until everything you know collapses.